What did it mean to be old in the medieval world? Did people simply fade away, tucked into quiet corners, their days of power and action long behind them? Think about a time when life expectancy was often half of what it is today, when illness could strike swiftly and danger lurked around every corner. Yet across the sprawling centuries from 500 CE to 1500 CE, some truly incredible individuals defied every expectation. Number 1. Doge Enrico Dandolo. Imagine a man, blind, frail, pushing 90 years old, yet still possessing a mind as sharp as any blade and a will as unbending as granite. This was Enrico Dandolo, elected Doge of Venice in 1192. He was not just old. He was ancient by medieval standards, a relic of a bygone era. His election itself was a testament to his reputation, a recognition that even at this advanced age his wisdom and experience were unmatched. His eyesight had failed him decades earlier, some tales suggesting it happened during a diplomatic mission to Constantinople, a city he would later shake to its very foundations. Most men in their 80s or 90s in that era were long retired. If they were even alive, Dandolo was just getting started. Venice, his beloved city, was a rising maritime power, a hub of trade and ambition. The Fourth Crusade was brewing, a grand enterprise meant to reclaim the Holy Land for Christendom. Crusaders from across Europe were gathering, eager to sail east, but they needed ships and they needed supplies. They turned to Venice, the undisputed master of the seas. A massive deal was struck. Venice would provide the fleet, the provisions, everything needed for the Holy War. In return, the Crusaders would pay a truly enormous sum of silver. It was an ambitious plan, almost certainly too ambitious. When the Crusaders arrived, many fewer than expected, they simply could not pay the agreed-upon amount. The entire venture teetered on the brink of collapse. This is where Enrico Dandolo, the nonagenarian Doge, stepped onto the world stage. He faced a monumental crisis. His city had committed vast resources, spent fortunes building ships, and now faced ruin. The Crusaders were desperate, some even threatening to abandon the crusade entirely. Dandolo, despite his blindness, stood before the assembled Crusaders and Venetians. He spoke with a voice that, though perhaps thin with age, carried the weight of decades of leadership. He offered a solution, a controversial and audacious one. He proposed that the Crusaders, unable to pay their debt, should instead help Venice reclaim the rebellious city of Zara on the Adriatic coast. It was a Christian city, under the protection of the King of Hungary, a fellow Catholic. The idea horrified many, but the Doge's power of persuasion, his strategic genius, and the sheer desperation of the Crusaders won the day. The fleet sailed, and Zara fell. But this was just the beginning of Dandolo's unconventional leadership. The crusade was now off course, its moral compass spinning wildly. Whispers and pleas from exiled Byzantine princes promising vast sums and support if their throne was restored soon reached the fleet. Constantinople, the magnificent capital of the Byzantine Empire, the jewel of the East, was now within reach. Dandolo, ever the pragmatist, ever looking out for Venice's interests, saw an opportunity. He argued forcefully, against the objections of many, that attacking Constantinople would not only solve their financial woes, but also open new trade routes and weaken Venice's greatest rival in the East. It seemed a mad plan for a blind old man to propose. Attacking Constantinople, a city famed for its impregnable walls and vast wealth, was an undertaking that had thwarted countless armies. Yet, Dandolo, with his relentless resolve, pushed the Crusaders forward. As the fleet approached the city's massive walls, the Doge performed an act of unimaginable courage. He ordered his own ship, the Dogessa, to be among the first to assault the sea walls. Chroniclers from the time describe him standing at the prow of his ship, fully robed, the standard of St. Mark fluttering nearby, urging his sailors and soldiers onward. He was likely in his late 80s or early 90s at this point, an age where most would be confined to bed, let alone leading a naval assault. His ship, likely lashed to others, was driven towards the sea walls. His personal banner was reportedly among the first to be planted on the ramparts, a symbolic act of defiance and leadership that shamed younger, fitter men into following. The sight of their blind ancient does leading the charge galvanized the Venetian forces. They poured onto the walls, fighting fiercely. The city ultimately fell, not once but twice, to the Crusaders, in what remains one of history's most infamous and devastating sacks. Dandolo was not just a spectator, he was an active participant, and the primary architect of this pivotal event. After the conquest, Dandolo remained a dominant figure. He helped oversee the division of the spoils, ensuring Venice gained vast territories, strategic ports, and immense wealth. He negotiated treaties, managed the nascent Latin Empire established on the ruins of Byzantium, and continued to act as a statesman and a conqueror. He was still ruling, still making critical decisions, still shaping the chilling landscape of the Eastern Mediterranean. Historians point to his cunning and determination, describing him as a man driven by ambition and an unyielding will to secure Venice's future. Enrico Dandolo died in May 1205 still in Constantinople. At the remarkable age of 97 or 98, he was buried in the Hagia Sophia, a monument to his ultimate triumph and a testament to his extraordinary resilience. He had lived a life of immense challenges, from losing his sight to navigating the treacherous waters of medieval politics and warfare. But at an age when most people were long gone, he masterminded one of the most audacious and controversial military campaigns in history. He defied the odds not just by surviving but by thriving, leading from the front and leaving an indelible mark on the world, all while an old man with failing senses. His story is a powerful reminder that age does not define a person's capacity for power, courage, or historical impact. Number 2. Eleanor of Aquitaine. Her life was an epic story, spanning an astonishing 82 years in a time when most people barely saw 40. Eleanor of Aquitaine, born around 1122, was not just a queen. She was a duchess in her own right, one of the wealthiest and most powerful women in 12th century Europe. She was Queen of France, then Queen of England, a crusader, a political prisoner, a regent, and a formidable power broker right up until her final days. Her journey was filled with twists, turns, and battles, both political and personal, that would have broken lesser individuals. Eleanor first became Queen of France by marrying Louis VII. She accompanied him on the Second Crusade in the 1140s, a highly unusual and dangerous undertaking for a queen. She traveled to the Holy Land, experiencing the harsh realities of medieval campaigning. Her involvement, though perhaps romanticized by later accounts, showed her adventurous spirit and determination. The crusade was a disaster, and her marriage to Louis eventually failed. Their union was annulled, leaving Eleanor free to marry again, a decision that would shake the foundations of European power. Her second marriage, to Henry Plantagenet, Duke of Normandy and Count of Anjou, was a political earthquake. Henry was far younger than she was, but together they formed a powerful alliance that would eventually create the Angevin Empire, stretching from Scotland to the Pyrenees. When Henry became King Henry II of England, Eleanor became Queen of England, a title she held for over 3 decades. With Henry, she had 8 children, including the future kings, Richard the Lionheart, and John. The early years of her marriage to Henry were dynamic, but their relationship soured. Henry was a dominant and often tyrannical ruler, and Eleanor, accustomed to her own power and independence, chafed under his control. Their conflict escalated dramatically when Eleanor, in her late 40s and early 50s, actively supported her sons in a rebellion against their father, Henry II. This was an act of extraordinary defiance, a direct challenge to the king. The rebellion ultimately failed, and Henry, enraged by her betrayal, imprisoned Eleanor. She was held captive for 16 long years, moving between various castles across England, a queen stripped of her freedom, but never her spirit. This was a truly dark period for her, a time when many would have given up hope. Yet she endured, maintaining her dignity and waiting for her moment. That moment came in 1189, when Henry II died. Her eldest surviving son, Richard, ascended to the throne as Richard I. One of his first acts as king was to release his mother from imprisonment. Eleanor, now in her late 60s, was finally free. Most people her age would have sought a quiet retirement, a peaceful end to a turbulent life. But Eleanor of Aquitaine was no ordinary person. She emerged from her captivity not diminished, but invigorated. She immediately plunged back into the heart of political life, becoming one of Richard's most trusted and influential advisors. When Richard departed for the Third Crusade, Eleanor, now in her early 70s, was appointed regent of England. She ruled the kingdom in his absence, a truly remarkable feat for a woman of her age. She traveled tirelessly across England, holding court, issuing charters, settling disputes, and ensuring the stability of the realm. Her political acumen was legendary. She was adept at navigating the complex web of feudal allegiances, maintaining order among the often fractious English nobility. Her resilience was further tested when Richard was captured on his journey back from the crusade and held for ransom in Germany. Eleanor, at an age when many would be considered too fragile for such a demanding task, took charge of his release. She personally negotiated with the German emperor, raised the enormous ransom funds, and even traveled to Germany to oversee her son's release. The thought of a woman in her 70s undertaking such a perilous and arduous journey across medieval Europe through bandit-infested lands and political minefields is astounding. She brought Richard home safely, solidifying her reputation as a powerful and indispensable figure. Even after Richard's death and the ascension of her youngest son, John, Eleanor remained active. She was instrumental in securing John's succession against rival claims, using her diplomatic skills to rally support for him. She continued to serve as a wise and experienced counselor, often mediating between John and his rebellious barons. She undertook another diplomatic mission to Castile in her late 70s to retrieve her granddaughter, Blanche of Castile, to be married to the future King Louis VIII of France, ensuring a strategic alliance that would have long-lasting consequences for both England and France. This journey, again, was a testament to her unyielding will and incredible physical and mental stamina. Eleanor of Aquitaine died in 1204 at the age of 82. She had outlived most of her children and grandchildren, and she had witnessed vast changes across Europe. She was buried in the Abbey of Fontevraud alongside her husband Henry II and her son Richard I. Her life was a testament to enduring strength, political shrewdness, and an indomitable spirit that refused to be defined by age or adversity. She faced imprisonment, betrayal, the loss of children, and constant political machinations. Yet she consistently emerged, not just surviving, but thriving and shaping the course of European history well into her old age. Number 3. William Marshal. He was born a younger son of a minor noble family, a path that often meant a life of obscurity in medieval society. Yet William Marshal, born around 1146, rose to become a legend in his own lifetime. Dubbed by his contemporaries the greatest knight that ever lived. He was a master of arms, a loyal servant to 5 English kings, and at an age when most men were long retired from the battlefield, he saved the English monarchy from utter collapse. His life was a whirlwind of tournaments, battles, political intrigue, and unwavering loyalty. He defied the odds not just by surviving countless deadly encounters, but by retaining his sharp mind and formidable skills well into his later years. William's early life was marked by hardship. As a young boy, he was offered as a hostage by his father to King Stephen during a civil war. When his father failed to surrender, the king threatened to hang William. The boy famously defied the king, playing with nearby flowers, seemingly unconcerned by his impending doom. He was spared. A first glimpse of his incredible resilience. He then embarked on a career as a landless knight, making his fortune through jousting tournaments. These were not mere sports. They were brutal, full-contact melees, where knights fought with live weapons for ransom and glory. William excelled, becoming a renowned champion across France and England, his reputation for skill and honor growing with every victory. His prowess brought him to the attention of King Henry II. William became a tutor-in-arms to the king's sons, including the fiery young Henry and the future Richard the Lionheart. He served these royal princes with unshakable loyalty, even as they rebelled against their father. He remained steadfast, a constant presence in a turbulent court. He was there for the turbulent reigns of Richard I and King John, advising, fighting, and navigating the often treacherous political landscape. He always put his duty and his sworn word above personal gain, earning him immense respect even from his enemies. The ultimate test of his resilience came late in his life. When King John died in 1216, England was in chaos. The country was in the grip of the First Barons' War, with rebellious English barons supported by Prince Louis of France, who had invaded England and claimed the throne. John's son, Henry III, was a mere 9 years old, a child king with no power, no authority, and little hope. The English monarchy teetered on the brink of extinction. The barons despised John, and many were ready to switch their allegiance to the French prince. At this critical moment, in his early 70s, William Marshal was elected Regent of England. This was an astounding appointment. Most men of his age would have been considered too old, too frail, too set in their ways to take on such an immense burden. Yet the barons and loyalists alike recognized that Marshal was the only man capable of uniting the kingdom and saving the young king. He was the most respected and trusted figure in England, a man whose word was his bond, and whose military genius was unrivaled. He had been a knight for over 50 years, fought in countless battles, and served 4 kings. Now, an old man, he faced the greatest challenge of his life. William Marshal, though undoubtedly feeling the aches and pains of a long and hard life, embraced his new role with the same vigor he had shown in his youth. He rode tirelessly across the country, rallying support for the young King Henry. He issued the reissue of the Magna Carta, a crucial document that helped win over wavering barons and provided a basis for peace. But mere words were not enough. England was still overrun by French forces and rebellious English nobles. Marshal knew that the war had to be won on the battlefield. In 1217, at the Battle of Lincoln, William Marshal, now aged 70 or 71, personally led the charge against the forces of Prince Louis and the rebellious barons. He famously strapped on his armor despite his advanced age and led his knights into the thick of the fighting. Imagine this sight. A man who had participated in tournaments and battles since his teens, now in his 8th decade, at the very forefront of a desperate battle to save his country. His presence, his unwavering courage, and his strategic brilliance inspired his forces to a decisive victory. The French and their allies were routed. This triumph was followed by another crucial victory at the Battle of Dover, a naval engagement that cut off Prince Louis's supplies and reinforcements. Again, Marshal's leadership and determination were key. These 2 victories, orchestrated and led by the aging regent, turned the tide of the war. Prince Louis was forced to negotiate a peace treaty and leave England. William Marshal had, through sheer will and military genius, saved the Plantagenet dynasty and secured the throne for Henry III. He continued to serve as regent, working to restore order and stability to England. He oversaw the reconstruction of the realm, the establishment of a working government, and the reconciliation of the warring factions. He was a statesman as much as a warrior, guiding the young king and ensuring a peaceful transition of power. William Marshal died peacefully in 1219 at the age of 72. He had lived an extraordinary life, rising from humble beginnings to become one of the most powerful and respected figures in England. He had defied the odds of survival in an incredibly violent era, fought tirelessly for what he believed was right, and, in his old age, performed the most crucial service of his life, saving his kingdom from collapse. His story is a powerful testament to the enduring strength of character, the power of loyalty, and the incredible impact one individual can have, regardless of their starting point or their age. Number 4. Justinian I. He was the architect of an empire's grand resurgence, a visionary emperor whose reign spanned almost 40 years, from 527 to 565 CE. Justinian I, the Byzantine emperor, was a man of boundless ambition and relentless drive. He aimed to restore the glory of the Roman Empire, to reclaim its lost western territories, and to rebuild its legal framework. He faced wars, rebellions, plagues, and immense political pressure. Yet he pushed forward with his ambitious agenda, ruling effectively and leaving an indelible mark on history well into his old age. He died at 83, an incredibly advanced age for his time, having worked relentlessly until his final breath. Justinian's reign began with a strong vision. He was determined to reconquer the western half of the Roman Empire, which had fallen to barbarian kingdoms decades earlier. This was an enormous undertaking, requiring vast military resources and strategic genius. He sent his brilliant general, Belisarius, to reclaim North Africa from the Vandals and then Italy from the Goths. These were long, brutal, and costly wars that lasted for decades, pushing the empire to its limits. Early in his reign, in 532, Justinian faced the Nika riots, one of the most violent insurrections in Byzantine history. The streets of Constantinople erupted into chaos, fueled by rival chariot racing factions and deep-seated political grievances. For days, the city burned, and Justinian and his court were trapped in the imperial palace, contemplating flight. It was his formidable wife, Empress Theodora, who famously stood firm, declaring she would rather die a ruler than live in exile. Inspired by her defiance, Justinian ordered Belisarius to suppress the riots with brutal efficiency. The city was saved, and Justinian's power was reasserted, but the event demonstrated the fragility of his position and the constant threats he faced. One of the greatest challenges Justinian endured, and perhaps the most terrifying, was the arrival of the Justinianic plague in the 540s. This devastating pandemic, considered one of the deadliest in history, swept across the Byzantine Empire and beyond, wiping out millions. It was a biological catastrophe that ravaged cities, depleted armies, and crippled economies. Justinian himself contracted the plague. He suffered terribly, enduring the agonizing symptoms that claimed so many of his subjects. Most people who contracted the plague died. Yet, against all odds, Justinian recovered. His survival was a testament to his physical resilience. But the aftermath of the plague presented enormous challenges. The empire was weakened, its manpower reduced, and its resources strained. Many leaders would have scaled back their ambitions, focused solely on recovery. But Justinian, even after recovering from the brink of death, continued to pursue his grand vision. He pushed for the continuation of the wars in Italy, despite the immense cost He continued his vast building projects, including the magnificent Hagia Sophia, a monument to his faith and power. Beyond military conquest and architectural marvels, Justinian's most enduring legacy was his monumental legal reform, the Corpus Juris Civilis, or the body of civil law. This vast compilation and codification of Roman law was a colossal undertaking requiring years of meticulous work by legal scholars. It was a project that he championed throughout his long reign, ensuring its completion even as he battled other crises. This legal code would shape European law for centuries to come, a testament to his intellectual ambition and dedication to rational governance. As he entered his 70s and then his 80s, Justinian remained deeply involved in the affairs of the state. He continued to issue new laws, to appoint officials, and to oversee the vast administration of his empire. He was described by contemporary historians as a tireless worker, obsessed with the details of governance and justice. He outlived many of his generals and advisors, experiencing the loss of his beloved Theodora in 548. Her death was a profound personal blow, yet he continued to rule alone, carrying the weight of the empire on his shoulders. His final years were marked by continued efforts to consolidate his empire, though the wars in the West eventually proved unsustainable. He also faced renewed threats from the Slavs and Avars in the Balkans, and from the Persian Empire in the East. Yet he remained active, his mind still sharp, his commitment to his duties unwavering. He never retired, never stepped back from the challenges of leadership. Justinian I died in 565 CE after a reign of 38 years. He had truly defied the odds of survival and effective governance in an age rife with disease, warfare, and political instability. He recovered from a deadly plague, navigated a devastating rebellion, and pursued a vast, ambitious program of imperial restoration, legal reform, and architectural innovation, all while bearing the immense burdens of leadership. His legacy is one of unwavering determination and a profound impact on the course of history, shaped by a man who refused to yield to the ravages of time or fate. Number 5. Empress Zoe, Porphyrogenita. She was born into the purple, a direct descendant of the powerful Macedonian dynasty that ruled the Byzantine Empire for centuries. Yet, for much of her early life, Zoe Porphyrogenita, born around 978 CE, seemed destined for a quiet, politically isolated existence. She was a princess, but as a woman she was largely confined to the palace, passed over for marriage opportunities, and expected to remain in the shadows. But fate, and an incredible will to survive, had other plans for Zoe. She would not just survive the tumultuous politics of Constantinople. She would reign as empress, navigate multiple marriages, coups, and power struggles, and die a powerful ruler in her early 70s, a testament to her astonishing resilience and political astuteness. Zoe lived a long time for a medieval woman, reaching her late 40s before she was thrust into the imperial spotlight. Her father, Emperor Constantine VIII, had no sons, and as his health failed, he needed an heir. He reluctantly turned to his eldest unmarried daughter, Zoe, a woman already considered well past childbearing age by the standards of the time. In 1028, at the age of 50, Zoe was married to Romanos Argyros, a respected nobleman, just days before her father's death. Romanos became Emperor Romanos III, and Zoe finally became empress. Her reign as empress was anything but serene. Romanos III proved to be an ineffective ruler, and Zoe found herself increasingly at odds with him. The Byzantine court was a viper's nest of intrigue and ambition. In 1034, after just 6 years on the throne, Romanos III died under suspicious circumstances. Many whispered that Zoe was involved, though direct proof is elusive. The very day of Romanos's death, Zoe, demonstrating an astonishing grasp of political maneuvering, immediately married her chamberlain, Michael. He became Emperor Michael IV. Her second marriage brought a new set of challenges. Michael IV, despite being Zoe's choice, proved to be an epileptic and increasingly withdrawn ruler. His family, particularly his unscrupulous brother John, the Orphanatrophos, gained immense power, effectively sidelining Zoe. She found herself once again marginalized, a queen in name but with little real authority. She endured this for 7 years, watching her influence wane. When Michael IV's health deteriorated to the point of incapacitation, John the Orphanatrophos tried to place his nephew, Michael V, on the throne, but Zoe, now in her late 50s, was far from powerless. When Michael V tried to exile her, the people of Constantinople, who had a surprising affection for the purple-born princess, revolted. They poured into the streets demanding her return. The young emperor was overthrown in a bloody coup, blinded and exiled. Zoe, against all expectations, was restored to full power, a testament to her enduring popularity and the political power of her lineage. This was a truly remarkable turnaround, a near-death political experience from which she emerged triumphant. Now, as the sole reigning empress in her late 50s, Zoe faced a dilemma. The Byzantine Empire, despite its glorious past, struggled with the concept of a sole female ruler. The court urged her to take another husband to provide stability and a male figurehead. She chose Constantine Monomachos, a man from a distinguished family, and in 1042 she married him. He became Emperor Constantine IX. This was her third marriage, and she was in her early 60s at this point. This marriage was different. Zoe and her younger sister, Theodora, who had also been raised to share the imperial dignity, effectively ruled alongside Constantine. The three co-ruled, a unique arrangement that reflected Zoe's unwavering determination to retain power. Throughout her rule with Constantine IX, Zoe continued to play an active role in imperial affairs. She oversaw ceremonies, issued decrees, and maintained her presence at court. Despite her advanced age, she reportedly remained interested in matters of state and continued to engage with her subjects. Her life, once confined, now saw her at the very heart of the empire, wielding direct authority for nearly 2 decades. She outlived Michael IV, and she saw the downfall of several powerful courtiers who had tried to control her. Empress Zoe died in 1050 at the age of 72. She had spent the last 22 years of her life as empress, a truly incredible duration given the precarious nature of Byzantine politics. She had navigated 3 marriages, each fraught with political danger, survived numerous coups, seen emperors rise and fall, and had been at the epicenter of Byzantine court intrigue for decades. Her resilience was not about military prowess or grand conquests, but about political survival, about the sheer will to remain relevant and powerful in a world that often sought to diminish women. She was a master of adaptation, leveraging her lineage, her popularity, and her own shrewd intelligence to defy the odds and hold on to the reins of power until her very last days. Number 6. Pope Leo III. In the turbulent world of the early 9th century, where political power and spiritual authority often clashed, Pope Leo III stood as a beacon of unwavering resilience. His pontificate, beginning in 795 CE, was marked by intense challenges, including an assassination attempt, public accusations, and exile. Yet he not only survived these incredible trials, but emerged stronger, cementing his authority and forever changing the course of European history by crowning Charlemagne as emperor. He reigned until 816, dying at the remarkable age of 78, having navigated decades of political storms with an iron will. Leo III inherited the papacy during a period of complex political allegiances. The popes of Rome were increasingly independent from the Byzantine Empire but lacked a strong secular protector in Italy itself. They looked north to the rising power of the Franks. Leo quickly established a close relationship with Charlemagne, the powerful king of the Franks, seeing in him a potential guardian for the church. The true test of Leo's resilience came in 799. While riding in a procession through the streets of Rome, he was ambushed by a mob of conspirators, including disgruntled Roman nobles and relatives of his predecessor, Pope Hadrian I. They dragged him from his horse, savagely attacked him, attempting to blind him and cut out his tongue. It was a brutal and desperate act, intended to incapacitate him and force him from office, or even kill him. Accounts from the time describe him being left for dead in the street, a horrifying scene for the spiritual leader of Christendom. Miraculously, Leo survived the assault. He was dragged to a nearby monastery, where he was supposedly tended to by loyal supporters. The conspirators, believing their deed done, tried to install their own candidate as pope. However, Leo, whether through divine intervention, as he later claimed, or simply through incredible fortitude and the aid of his allies, managed to escape. The narrative of his healing from his injuries is often cited as a miracle, bolstering his divine authority. He fled Rome, crossing the Alps to reach Charlemagne's court in Paderborn. This journey, undertaken by a man recently brutalized and seeking asylum, was a perilous one. Leo presented himself to Charlemagne, seeking justice and protection. Charlemagne, who already held the Pope in high regard, recognized the gravity of the situation. He sent Leo back to Rome with a strong Frankish escort, intending to investigate the accusations against him and restore order. Upon his return to Rome, Leo faced a council assembled by Charlemagne. His enemies continued to accuse him of various misdeeds and immoral acts, charges designed to strip him of his legitimacy. This was a direct attack on his character and his right to hold the papacy. In a dramatic turn of events, on December 23, 800, Leo, following an ancient custom, swore an oath of purgation before Charlemagne and the assembly. He publicly declared his innocence of all charges, an act that effectively cleared his name and reasserted his authority. He had faced down his accusers and emerged victorious, thanks in large part to Charlemagne's support. Just 2 days later, on Christmas Day, 800, in St. Peter's Basilica, Pope Leo III performed an act that would forever change the course of European history. As Charlemagne knelt to pray, Leo placed a crown upon his head and proclaimed him Emperor of the Romans. This act, often debated as to whether Charlemagne expected it or not, signified a profound shift in power. It revived the concept of a Western Roman Empire and inextricably linked the papacy to the emerging Frankish power. Leo had not just secured his own position. He had redefined the very nature of political and spiritual authority in the West. He was not merely a survivor. He was a strategic genius, capable of leveraging a crisis into a moment of bought power. Leo III continued to reign as Pope for another 16 years after the imperial coronation. He worked closely with the new emperor, fostering the Carolingian Renaissance and solidifying the relationship between the Church and the Frankish Empire. He continued to face challenges, including further unrest in Rome and the complex politics of a newly crowned empire. Despite the constant pressures, he remained steadfast, upholding the dignity of his office and guiding the Church through a crucial period of transition. Pope Leo III died in 816, having served as Pope for over 20 years. He had defied the odds of physical survival after a brutal assault, faced down powerful enemies, and emerged from exile to perform an act that reshaped the gilding map of Europe. His resilience was not just about enduring hardship. It was about transforming adversity into opportunity, ensuring his own survival while simultaneously elevating the power of the papacy and creating a new imperial order. His story remains a powerful testament to the fortitude required to lead in a dangerous and unpredictable age. Number 7. Frederick Barbarossa, known as Redbeard. Frederick I, Holy Roman Emperor, was a towering figure in 12th century Europe. Born around 1122, he reigned from 1152, embodying the medieval ideal of a chivalrous emperor, a formidable warrior, and a skilled statesman. He spent decades consolidating his power in Germany, asserting his authority over rebellious Italian cities, and engaging in numerous wars and diplomatic maneuvers. His life was a testament to his ambition and drive. Yet his final, most dramatic act of defiance against the odds came in his late 60s, when he embarked on one of the most perilous journeys of the age, leading a massive army on the Third Crusade. Frederick's reign was long and active, filled with campaigns to assert imperial control over the powerful city-states of Lombardy and Italy. He led multiple expeditions across the Alps, enduring difficult terrain, fierce resistance from the Italian communes, and devastating outbreaks of disease that decimated his armies. He faced defeat, famously at the Battle of Legnano in 1176, where his army was decisively beaten by the Lombard League. Yet, Frederick always recovered, always found a way to reassert his authority, whether through further campaigns or cunning diplomacy. He was a master of both war and peace, capable of adapting to setbacks. By the late 1180s, news reached Europe that Saladin had captured Jerusalem, dealing a crushing blow to Christian power in the Holy Land. A new crusade was called the Third Crusade, attracting the greatest monarchs of Europe: Richard I of England, Philip II of France, and the elderly Frederick Barbarossa. At 66 or 67 years old, Frederick was by far the oldest of the Crusader monarchs. Many would have expected him to send an army, or perhaps just provide financial support. Instead, he chose to lead it himself, despite his advanced age and the immense dangers of such an undertaking. Leading a medieval army on a long-distance campaign was a brutal affair, even for young, fit men. It involved months of arduous marching, exposure to harsh weather, constant threat of ambush, and the ever-present danger of disease. Frederick's decision to personally lead such a massive expedition, perhaps as many as 100,000 men by some accounts, was a profound act of faith and determination. He intended to lead his army overland, through the Byzantine Empire, across Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, and into the Levant. This was the most difficult and dangerous route imaginable. The journey through the Balkans and Byzantine lands was fraught with tension. The Byzantines, wary of such a large Western army marching through their territory, were often hostile, denying supplies and harassing Frederick's forces. Frederick, with his decades of experience, navigated these diplomatic minefields, often resorting to military threats to secure passage and provisions. His army endured skirmishes, hunger, and extreme exhaustion, but he kept them moving forward. The real challenge began in Anatolia. The terrain was rugged and unforgiving. The climate was harsh, with scorching heat by day and freezing temperatures at night. Turkish forces constantly harassed the Crusaders, launching hit-and-run attacks. Disease began to take its toll, weakening the army. Many men deserted, unable to bear the immense hardships. Yet, Frederick Barbarossa, the emperor in his late 60s, continued to lead from the front. He was a symbol of enduring strength, reportedly still riding with his men, still making strategic decisions, still inspiring loyalty among his battered troops. His leadership was critical in overcoming the immense logistical challenges and the constant threat from the Sultanate of Rum. He led his army through difficult mountain passes and fought fierce battles against the Turks, most notably at the Battle of Iconium, where his forces decisively defeated a larger Turkish army. This victory, achieved by an aging emperor and a weary army, demonstrated his continued military prowess and the resilience of his forces. By June 1190, after months of relentless campaigning, Frederick's army was nearing the end of the Anatolian leg of their journey. They had overcome unimaginable obstacles. Success seemed within reach. Then, a tragic and sudden end came. On June 10, 1190, while crossing the Salif River, in modern-day Turkey, Frederick Barbarossa drowned. The exact circumstances are debated. Some accounts say he decided to take a swim in the cooling waters to alleviate the heat and exhaustion. Others, that he was thrown from his horse. Regardless, the mighty emperor, who had defied the odds of age and hardship for so long, met his end in a swift and unexpected accident. His death was a devastating blow to the Third Crusade. His army, deprived of its legendary leader, largely disintegrated, with many soldiers turning back or falling prey to disease. The dream of a unified German contribution to the crusade, led by its most powerful monarch, vanished. Frederick Barbarossa, the old emperor who had personally led his army through thousands of miles of hostile territory and countless battles, died on campaign, still active, still in command, still pushing forward. He defied the odds, not by reaching a peaceful old age, but by refusing to let age prevent him from pursuing his grandest ambition, a final monumental act of leadership and courage in the face of impossible odds. Number 8. Rollo of Normandy. He began his life as a fearsome Viking chieftain, a raider from the cold north who struck terror into the hearts of Frankish kings. But Rollo, born sometime in the mid-9th century, defied the common fate of many Viking warriors, who often died violently in battle. Instead, he lived to a considerable age, likely in his 70s, and transformed himself from a marauding pirate into the founder of a powerful and enduring duchy, a testament to his astonishing adaptability and long-term vision. His story is one of raw power evolving into sophisticated statecraft, all accomplished while he was already an old man by medieval standards. Rollo's early life was dominated by the Viking way of life. He led devastating raids across northern Europe, plundering monasteries, sacking towns, and terrorizing the Frankish kingdom. He was a formidable warrior, known for his strength and strategic cunning. He repeatedly laid siege to cities like Paris, extracting tribute and spreading fear. He was a powerful and persistent threat to the struggling Carolingian Empire, which was fragmented and weak. By the late 9th and early 10th centuries, Rollo and his Viking band had established a semi-permanent presence in the lower Seine Valley, in what is now northern France. The Frankish kings were desperate to stop the raids, but they lacked the military strength to dislodge the seasoned Vikings. They had tried fighting and they had largely failed. A new approach was needed. In 911 CE, King Charles the Simple of West Francia made a desperate gamble. He offered Rollo a deal that would forever change the course of French and European history. If Rollo would cease his raiding, convert to Christianity, and protect the Frankish kingdom from other Viking incursions, Charles would grant him a large territory around the city of Rouen. This was the famous Treaty of St. Clair-sur-Epte. Rollo, likely around 70 years old at this point, faced a profound choice. He could continue his life of raiding, a path that guaranteed continued warfare and eventual death. Or he could embrace an entirely new way of life, becoming a settled ruler, a duke, and a Christian. Many Viking leaders might have dismissed such an offer, preferring the freedom of the axe and the longship. But Rollo, despite his age, demonstrated remarkable foresight and pragmatism. He accepted the offer. His conversion to Christianity was a powerful symbolic act. He was baptized with the name Robert, though he is still known by his Viking name. This was more than just a religious change. It was a fundamental shift in identity and political allegiance. He became a vassal of the Frankish king, pledging loyalty and taking on the responsibility of governing a territory. The challenge for Rollo now was to transform his unruly band of Viking warriors into a settled population, to establish law and order, and to defend his new territory. This required immense leadership and a different kind of strength than he had shown in battle. He had to convince his followers, many of whom were still dedicated to raiding, to embrace a settled agricultural life. He divided the land among them, encouraging them to marry local women and adopt Frankish customs. Rollo proved to be an effective and surprisingly just ruler. Chronicles from the time speak of the strict laws he imposed, bringing a measure of peace and prosperity to the region. He famously hung gold rings from trees in his duchy for days, untouched, a testament to the order and safety he established. He built churches and rebuilt towns that had been ravaged by Viking raids, even those led by himself. He was no longer just a destroyer. He was a builder, a founder. His final years were spent solidifying the foundations of what would become the powerful Duchy of Normandy. He ensured the succession of his son, William Longsword, and set the stage for a dynasty that would eventually conquer England. He died sometime between 928 and 933. Likely in his early 70s, Rollo of Normandy defied the odds in multiple ways. He survived decades of brutal Viking warfare, a feat in itself. But more profoundly, in his old age, he demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for transformation. He shed the identity of a raider and embraced the role of a ruler, a testament to his intelligence, adaptability, and vision. He laid the groundwork for a duchy that would become one of the most influential political entities in medieval Europe, all while an old man who could have easily chosen a more violent and less constructive path. His story is a powerful example of how even the most hardened warriors can find new purpose and leave an enduring legacy through strategic change and long-term vision, even in the twilight of their lives.